Hello and welcome to Open Minds UFO Radio. I am your host, Alejandro Rojas, and I am here with Mr. Martin Willis, a fan favorite. Hello, Martin. How are you?
Hello, how you doing? Glad to
Good,
be
not
here.
too bad. So I think, I've been out. Well, I haven't been out. I think to a lot of my audience, they'll feel like I've been out because they haven't heard from me on Open Minds a lot in the last couple of weeks, unless they follow my, you know, Twitter or something. But they that's because I was working the Congress, and of course, every year this is where I've got to help out with the UFO Congress, and that's a lot of work. And you have helped out the last few years, including this year. So this year was completely online, and I guess I've got other exciting things to talk about, including UFO news. But let's talk about the Congress a little. First of all, welcome back, Mr. Martin.
Yes, it's good to be back. Yeah. That was, you guys did a great job. I mean, what a challenge that is to take a conference and try to figure out how to put it online, just
Yeah.
online. I mean, and you did an amazing job. You had all these things I never heard of. Whova. And
Whova, which is a
yeah,
really funny topic because people started making fun of all the different ways people were pronouncing it. It's spelled Whova, and people, for some reason, have a hard time saying that word. You know what I'm addicted to? Speaking of these online tools that I'm loving, including the one that we used for, these things here, is I love sharing my screen like just out of nowhere because you can do that.
yeah.
It's so fun. So I'm going to do it right now. In fact, you do it too if you want to. If you're like, hey, I want to show you what I'm talking about. Just because I want to show people, here's what it looks like. Whova, Whova. Whova is how I believe it's said. I think we've talked to tech support, and that's what they use. But people were calling it Whova, I think was a big one. Whova.
Yeah, I guess you don't say, woo is that over there?
Yeah, who is that? And I think that there were even people adding syllables. So I don't know where they came up with these pronunciations. And I can't say they're wrong because I don't know, to be honest. But I think it's Hoover. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, this was a really cool app. And I love using our app. You know what I love doing too is just this. Because if you're thinking of something, you can Google it and then bring it up and show your audience, which is a lot of fun, except for those who are listening. Sorry, guys. But those
That's
who can
true.
see it. And it
Yeah.
is just Whova. But yeah, great tool that creates kind of this community atmosphere. And really, it was quirky in that it was created to supplement your conference, to be able to provide some live coverage and to be your conference app. So people can go there, see the agenda, communicate, know where to go. So it's meant to accompany a physical event. But because of COVID, they kind of scrambled and tried to package and market it as an online only event kind of tool, and which I'm glad they did. And then Karen found it and we used it, and it worked pretty well. I think that there are some little quirks still because it was originally meant to accompany a physical conference, but otherwise I think it worked really well. 99% of people, some people had tech problems. You're always going to have that with technology, but most people were able to use it and it worked pretty well. I think people were pretty happy with it. In fact, in our responses, a lot of people said, keep using this, love it, love the app.
Yeah, you can use it in a regular conference as well, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
and then you could also put clips up or whatever. You could do a lot with that with a
Yeah.
regular live conference. But
Which will do.
yeah, it was fun how some people that went to the conference last year started connecting to me through that app.
Oh, how
Like, hey,
cool.
how you doing? It was almost like, we were having these chats back and forth.
And the app's still up. So people who had tickets, if you don't know that, you can go in there and still watch the talks that you haven't seen. I'm sure a lot of people do know that because they're probably going back and watching the videos. But like Martin, you could go in there right now and log back in and watch any videos you didn't catch, and communicate with people still. So
Yeah. So it's a really trying to show this, but there's a little bit of glare here.
Yeah, if you keep it
again
still
for the
a
people
sec.
watching on YouTube, I can't really see anything. Yeah.
Looks
But
like an
anyway,
alien. I
it's a
think I
great
see
little
an
app for the
alien.
phone too. Once you get used to it, it
Yeah.
works really well.
Yeah. You feel you seem kind of uncomfortable when I full screen you.
Yeah, I have a
You can
face for
keep it like
radio.
this.
That's why. Yeah.
No, you're not. Martin, you're adorable. And it's not the first time you've heard
shucks.
that.
Oh, well,
I've had
today.
people tell me Martin's adorable. Oh, somebody noticed my tiki mug. I got that
Yeah, I
last time
saw
I was
that.
in Hawaii
Yeah.
because with Richard Dolan, with the Dolans and my friend Lori Wagner, because the coffee cups were really tiny and I wanted something cool. And now I'm in love with this cup. So it's my main cup when I'm here at Open Minds TV headquarters in California, which is kind of funny because people might have said, wait a second. I just saw Alejandro with doing the What's Doug rating yesterday and he was in Arizona. Now he's in California. That's right. I did go back and forth. So here I am in California. But
what's
it
it,
is
5
kind of
hours?
too.
5-hour drive or something like that?
It's 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't make it 5.5, but you got to at least take a couple stops.
Yeah. You go by that big thermometer?
What's that?
Do you go by that big thermometer? No, it's a different way. Yeah.
No, we do go by a lot of nothing really. We go by Dateland. There's no roadside attractions really on the route because this is the 8 and it's right along the Mexico border. You're really skating the Mexico border, which doesn't mean there shouldn't be roadside attractions. There should be, but there's not on that route, unfortunately. But yeah, the conference went really great. In fact, I guess some of the news that I was going to share is, that's where I was. And I was like, it wasn't like I was not doing UFO stuff. It was actually, UFO stuff times 1,000 because I'm not only hosting it, but especially last day, I was doing some interviews. So, for example, the Chris Bledsoe, that was kind of a interview type style with me and him. I can't remember. We probably had some others like that, but
Selma Siddiq
was an interview like that,
which was very, very good, by the way.
That, yeah, that went great. That was so good. And you know what's interesting, and especially I think on our shows, Martin, because we're more open to this, and I could be wrong, but you and I think, get a lot of new people. We attract a lot of people who aren't into UFOs as much. And I think it's because, I get this feedback. I get this feedback about you because we do so much together that it makes it easy because we don't, you don't have to believe people are talking to aliens to watch our shows. You can just have a very light interest in UFOs and join and not feel like you've entered crazy land or anything. Not to say that all those are crazy land, just to say that people feel off. It's a little bit off-putting. So I get a lot of newbies. You get a lot of newbies. The Congress, we always have, surprisingly, even though we go to the Congress and it seems like it's all the same people, 30 to 50% of those people are brand new, never been to a UFO conference. And it was the same case with this one. So, my point is, I don't remember what my point is. I was talking about attracting newbies.
New people coming in the show. That's kind of where you were going, I think. We both get a lot of new people and people that are kind of outside of the UFO.
Oh, yeah. I know my point. So, for instance, the Ruwa encounter in Zimbabwe, and that was so embarrassing. I was already tired, but at the beginning I said South Africa, and she says, no, Zimbabwe. Duh.
Well, you can understand that.
And she was very nice about it. She's very nice about everything. So nice and so intelligent. But the Ruwa Zimbabwe encounter, not everybody's familiar with. To some of us in the field, we're like, what? You don't know this case? And I think having that kind of attitude can put people off because they're like, oh, they're going to look bad at me because I don't know much about all this stuff. But it was such an interesting encounter. And it's so fun then to introduce people to it, especially via a witness who is now, is she in her 30s now or are they in their 20s still?
It was hard to say. Let's see. She said it was 1994, and I thought she said she was 12. but I don't remember for sure. So if you do that math, yeah, she would be in her
But a
30.
young adult in her younger 30s or older 20s, and a professional, educated, and just yeah, she's a great pleasure to talk to, and it's a really good case.
Very articulate.
Mhm. Mark Salzman is saying that. Oh, you just said thank you. You had Tom Reed on. I've had him on before too, Mark. But you had Tom Reed on. Of course, you had him on recently, which is important because the reboot of Unsolved Mysteries did an episode called The Berkshire. Well, I don't. Maybe you could tell people about that.
The Berkshire's UFO. Yes, it's really. I don't know if everyone out there has Netflix and available to see this, but I'll tell you, it is a fantastic episode about that. And I've listened to Tom. I've had him on the show before, Tom Reed, and I was in Phoenix when he spoke out there, several years ago at your UFO conference out there. I had no idea there were so many witnesses, and it's amazing. And another aspect is, there is this. I sent you a link before in the past, Alejandro, about this panel. It's called the Behavioral Panel, and they basically are 4 experts that watch the human behavior, and they can see if it looks like someone's telling the truth, or if they're recalling a story. But they look for all the signs, and they each have an expertise in each part of the 4 of them have an expertise in each part of whether someone, one of them is an interrogation expert. And so they kind of understand, how to lead people and all that. So they interviewed Tom, and I got an email from Scott Roos, who's like the chief of the 4 people.
How
and
cool.
He said he's telling the truth 100% when he talks about that story. And they they've also looked at other people where they've watched their interviews on that particular show, that episode, and they're saying, no, they're not BSing.
Are there other UFO? There's only one other UFO person that I know of that they've done. Are there others?
Yes, they do go through. They go through Bob Lazar, and it's not pretty. They check Bob Lazar's. They go through him very deeply, and I know every time I bring that subject up on my show, I get some email. People to believe in Bob Lazar all the way, and but they kind of tear him apart. They tear his story apart and his reactions, the way he's telling the story. They can see all the signs of something going on there, and they said he is a fantastic storyteller.
And if people look at my Twitter, I got in kind of a Twitter debate about Lazar recently, and a lot of people brought up a lot of stuff I hadn't even looked into yet, and I know I forwarded some of that to you. It's just the more you look into his story, the worse it gets. I'm sorry, people. He's got a history of exaggeration, falsehoods, and yeah. So I did see some of that video that you sent me, and I need to watch the whole thing again. But they were bringing up, even before they got, whether looking at his body and his behavioral, signs, they brought up great research points in him changing his stories and things that.
About the hole in the craft, and
those are really good points. And I think that, we have to pay attention to that sort of thing. Just because Joe Rogan all of a sudden believes, Lazar is the real deal doesn't mean he is. I mean, I think we got to do better research, and it is unfortunate. It's one of those things where I had too much into it. In the beginning, I relied on George Knapp's work. The more I looked into it, the more I started to kind of disagree with George, and even talk to him about it and ask him and converse with him. And he was like, yeah, I get it, and I feel like even when we've talked recently, he's like, I get it. He says, given what some of the information I can't share is why I believe so much, but that's hard to ask someone like me who's on the side to trust in information I don't have. And what information, the more I look out there, the worse it is. So sorry, people, but do your own research. People keep asking me to put something more comprehensive together. I don't want to do that. However, because I don't want to waste the time, to be honest, there's so much more to cover and look into. And I've got so many things I want to write about that are important, like this story I just put up yesterday on Open Minds. And we'll get into that. But Michael Schratt, who used to work with Open Minds, did a great document. I think that going
Documentary?
over Lazar. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
You meant documentary, not document.
No, document. That one I sent
document.
you to. Yeah, Michael Schratt did a. Did he do a documentary on Lazar?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you were talking about something else. Go ahead. Yeah. I got it.
I think this is the thing. People like you, UFO Storian, Majestic Q Clarence, and I want people to know I really love when people have differing opinions. So please don't take this as, in a bad way. But absolutely, Bottom is telling the truth. There's no way you can know that. I mean, it unfortunately, we just can't know that. And he's one person. It would be different. We can say we believe he's telling the truth, but we don't know for sure. I mean, we don't have enough information to say for sure he is. And we do have a lot of information to indicate that he probably is not. Given his history.
For one thing, the education, and people always say, that, so what if he lied about his education? But that's important to me. If he says he went to MIT, but when asked, what the square was outside of MIT in a public forum, he didn't know that it was Kendall Square. And anyone who's ever set their foot in MIT in any type of way knows that.
That's another great example. And there's so many of these examples that just pile up. And I would just say, I'm going to ask Michael if it's okay if I share on Open Minds his report. And so that people will have that available. If you want to look at it, just Google Michael Schratt Lazar. You'll probably find it. It's also, if you look at my Twitter conversations, you'll find it there. So, I mean, as much as, I would have, George Knapp, I always talk about how much I love the guy. I'm one of his biggest fans. But this is just one we don't agree on, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But have those guys done any other UFO people?
Let's see. I know they've done, and they don't want to be known for the UFO people.
Right.
But I'm still going to have them. They're going to be on my show. We're going to actually talk about it, which is kind of unusual. They're going to be on my UFO show sooner or later.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So stay tuned to your show for more on that.
Yeah. But anyway, they said they don't want to be known for that, but they've done, I don't know if anyone out there has followed, like the Steve Avery story, Making a Murderer. That was a very popular show on Netflix. So they've done a lot of people like that, even Joe Biden, and but not too many. I think it was Jane Green from the Berkshires UFOs. It was Tom Reed, of course. And then Bob Lazar. I believe that's all they did on the UFO topic. And I've told them, I sent them a clip of Selma Siddick, and I said, "Why don't you watch this and tell me what you think?" That's your homework. I told them.
Nice.
That's your homework. Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of scary though too. So, although I don't,
she's solid. Yeah,
I think she's gonna be solid. Somebody asked, Stanton brought us Zeta Reticuli, almost certain that was part of the Hill story. True. Stanton didn't really bring us this. And this was Ad Astra Recordings. Thank you for being here again. By the way, thank you all. Mark, Ad Astra, Dirk, all of you who are here, Renee, Gas Mask, Curtis. So the Ad Astra, the Zeta Reticuli piece, what happened is, and Zeta Reticuli is really bad too, in that somebody mentioned how there are no habitable planets in the Zeta Reticuli system. Great point. What happened was Betty Hill, when she was on the ship, remembers having a conversation with the critters or the whatever they were on the ship. And one of the things she noticed was this star system, what appeared to be a star system or a bunch of stars and some kind of like 3D type of display. And she assumed that was where they were, or where, essentially. And she drew a picture of this in a regression. It is kind of cute because she says that during, her encounter during the regression, she was telling the alien, I can't wait to share this with people or something like that. And they're like, you're not going to remember this. And she said, yes, I will. They said, no, you're not. She said, yes, I will. And in regression, maybe she did. I mean, it's interesting that her regression was so similar to her husband's, and they were regressively. So they were painting each other's kind of ideas. And supposedly they hadn't talked about it prior. But she drew a picture from her memory, from the regression of the configuration of the stars. Then a lady named Marjorie Fish looked at it and said it kind of fits that might be Zeta Reticuli. And later she said that's probably not the case. The statistical chances of me getting it right are extraordinary, which is a great point. So, taking these random dots and stuff from memory and then matching them up to star systems, yeah, right. That's going to be extraordinarily difficult. But because she did that, and because the Zeta Reticuli got out there, all of a sudden everything's Zeta Reticuli. All the aliens are from Zeta Reticuli, this and that, over this very dubious. That's the problem with the UFO field. They get these little pieces of information and people run with it, and all of a sudden you literally have maybe thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people out there who claim they're talking to people from Zeta Reticuli. So
there is kind of a bright spot in that story. Is SETI actually moved their telescopes over, the radioscopes there, over to Zeta Reticuli and studied it.
Oh, yeah,
Seth Shostak told me that.
Yeah, which is true. And that's where this information comes from. A lot of people cite is that, they found it doesn't have any habitable, planets, nor did they get any responses. Of course, if there's an advanced civilization there, doesn't mean that, if we train our radio telescopes and we don't hear anything, then there's definitely nobody there. Doesn't mean that. But it just means that everything we've done to try to detect something there or detect any habitable planets, as far as we understand what is habitable, who knows? I mean, anything's possible. There could be, we could even do this one day. We're doing it on Mars. Mars is the only planet populated solely by robots, as far as we know. And I think our science is pretty good on this. And those are all our robots. So maybe we decide we're going to have a little robot base where the robots come back and charge up. And, this is a bit where it's robots, and it's not, you could do that practically anywhere. It's interesting, actually. Ridley Scott has a new TV show on HBO. I don't know if you've seen this. It's only on HBO Max, and it's kind of frustrating because I have HBO Max via Hulu, but it's not on Hulu. So I can only watch it on my computer on HBO Max. But it's essentially these robots going to these other planets, and in this case, trying to repopulate the humans and stuff like that. But, if we sent robots to places, they would be able to go to other planets and be able to survive in places that we wouldn't. So who knows? I mean, a lot of people feel like the little gray figures that people are saying are robots, drones of some sort.
Definitely would solve the time issue, that you always hear about. Oh, that just takes too long. People wouldn't be able to, survive a generation without, getting to the first star, et cetera, et cetera. So that would, I don't know about for us, but I mean, what our future plans are. But getting us out there on another planet is not a bad idea eventually, if we can do that.
Right.
Because you never know. We could have another extinction event. And if the human species is to keep carrying on, it would be nice to have another place to rely on if we could. But Mars is pretty cold and pretty scary and pretty deadly at this point. I don't know if that could ever be changed or not.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I wrote a couple of stories on this when it was really becoming more of a big thing. And this was also related to the Mars television program with National Geographic. And this is when NASA was talking about Mars and going to Mars. The last administration was more focused on Mars than the moon. And, that's what our focus was, to go to Mars. And Elon Musk is still focused on that, and he probably will make it there first. And it was controversial to say that back then, but that's why I love that Nat Geo Mars show. It showed just what you're talking about, how difficult and all of the things you need to consider. And we're so far away from considering everything that we need to consider to actually have people living on Mars for any period of time. So, yeah, even Elon Musk hasn't really thought about the habitat part, which of course is Robert Bigelow's specialty. Robert Bigelow, who we all know participated in the Pentagon UFO investigations, his company Bigelow Aerospace. And his company was building these inflatable habitats, but his company might have gone under because of the pandemic. So, and really, we haven't needed habitats yet. So, I think they just haven't gotten any orders. There's nobody saying, hey, I need a habitat for Mars or the moon or for a space station around the planet. I think he's just maybe slightly and only slightly ahead of his time. So we'll see what happens with Bigelow Aerospace. Hopefully they are able to stick around or reboot at one point, because we will need those habitats. And I think everybody agrees these inflatable habitats are the best idea. And I am fairly certain, especially from talking to some of the insiders, that a lot of the space contractors, companies out there agree that the inflatables is when we get to the point of needing habitats is the way to go. So we'll see.
But the shielding. What about the shielding? Not just Mars, but the moon. If you're on the moon,
you don't need it as badly. Essentially, there's tons of radiation coming from the sun. Electromagnetic fields, like the fields we have around the planet, are what protect us and the moon. But once you get out of the protective bubble of Earth, that's where it's really dangerous, and you don't want to be in that zone for very long without any sort of shielding. Some scientists have argued that the distance and the time it takes to get to Mars isn't that dangerous. NASA, I don't think, agrees with that. They would like some type of shielding. And so far, the different ideas are, and in fact, in this Away television show on HBO, which is a great show. It's a little nerdy, might be a little boring for some, but it's essentially, NASA when they go to Mars type of thing. I like it. Might be a little slow for some. No lasers and aliens. But in that show, they have a water bubble around their ship. So essentially the walls are full of water. But one of the things I've written about, and which is still a leading idea, is that you put your gray water in the walls. And gray water, of course, is your discharge. So you put, poop and pee are in your walls because they process that. But the great thing is that what they could do is put those in the walls. So you're surrounded by your gray matter while it's being processed and reused for the astronauts to be used. And at the same time, that water and feces is actually really good for shielding radiation. So that is actually one of the leading plans also. Wow. Oh, Ad Astra just said Avenue 5 covers that, which is hilarious. Avenue 5 was a comedy show on HBO. If you haven't seen that, did you see that, Martin?
No.
It's freaking hilarious. It is so good. It's essentially a cruise, like a cruise liner in space gone wrong, and it's freaking hilarious. It's really good. It's kind of like The Office in space.
How about that?
Really good. So so those are some of the ideas of what we'll need to do. We need bouncy castles on Mars. That's funny. Let's see. So that's some of that going on. That's Blackwater. Gray is just sinks, etc. Oh, okay. Blackwater.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going to correct you on that, but yeah, the gray water is like dishwater and stuff like that, and then there's the other stuff which could clog the pipes, so to speak.
You can say it.
The other stuff.
Yeah.
No.
What is the other stuff?
No, this is a safe for work show.
What, poop and pee?
Okay, yeah, I guess I could say that. That's technical enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
We digress.
Yeah, let's get into at least some of the news, because that's what this is also supposed to be about, is UFO news, right? but these topics are so fun. But oh, I just saw somebody writing about the grays from Zeta Reticuli, and I was thinking of gray water, and I was trying to connect some kind of joke, and it didn't work. But it's just funny to think of that anyway.
Yeah.
But the UFO news. So one thing that I think is important is what I posted yesterday. I don't know if you saw this yet, Martin, but on openminds.tv, I posted an article from the magazine. So, and what's shocking to me is that a lot of these magazine articles that we wrote are still articles that are important, but you can't find a lot of information elsewhere. In this case, I reference this a lot, but there's not a lot of information out there. So I'm really happy to have this article that Antonio Huneas, my colleague, wrote for Open Minds magazine on the website now. And it's about the Carter administration. And I think this is really important right now because we've posted the memos about some of the conversation going back and forth between NASA and the White House and the Air Force about in 1977, when Jimmy Carter became president, he had said, I had a UFO sighting and I want to, have the government investigate UFOs. A lot of people don't realize, a lot of people say, oh, he never did it. Somebody's walking around back there, but that's not the case.
Is it a gray?
He did do it. He asked NASA to research UFOs. And then NASA, kind of hem and hawed. Looks like there was some conversation behind the scenes with the Air Force where the Air Force is like, don't do it. Literally, we have a memo there where they're like, I hope you can get out of this. Literally.
Really? Is that right?
But, at the same time, the scientists you can see they're struggling because they're like, okay, we've got two options. Let's not do it. If we don't do it, the conspiracy people are going to be all upset. If we do it, then we're going to have an issue with the science community that we interact with on a regular basis. So they were kind of in between these two difficult situations. And they essentially went with that kind of this idea that there's not enough information there to do anything with, which is a bit of a cop-out. But the White House accepted that and we moved on. But it details some of these backgrounds, some of what happened there, which I think is really interesting because I think these are the same sort of conversations going on right now as the Senate Intelligence Committee has asked, all of these military intelligence agencies to begin to coalesce their information and work together on UAP research. And now they're having these conversations. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Is it even worth doing? And fortunately, I think the last part, the worth doing part, we've gotten past that hurdle in that it's worth doing. But what is worth doing and why? Those are the big questions. Those are a lot of the questions that I asked some of our panelists at the UFO Congress, especially Nick Pope, Brian Bender, MJ Banayas. And I will be interviewing these guys soon to get further into some of that. In fact, tomorrow, I'll have this posted soon, I'll be interviewing Adam Kehoe. I'll also be talking to Kevin Knuth, the physicist, soon. And also James Fox, which is something else we could talk about because on October 6th, James Fox's new movie, The Phenomenon, is that what it's called? Isn't it?
Yeah,
Martin?
The Phenomenon. Yep.
And it's going to be coming out. And fortunately, Martin and I, because we're so cool, have screeners. And I haven't watched it yet. I've seen the trailer, which I think is great. Did you watch the screener?
Yes, I watched it.
What do you think?
It's right up there with, James. I've said this before to James when he was on my show and to his face, and he does. It's my favorite movies are James Fox movies when it comes to the UFO topic, and the quality of this movie. And he's got Peter Coyote, and narrating. The quality of this movie is superb, and there's a lot of things from the past that we're unaware of that he brings in. I should say I'm unaware of. Perhaps you've seen certain things, and so he does. There's some reenactments that are really well done. It's like a big budget film about UFOs, and it's just so well. Christopher Mellon's in it quite a bit, but it's fantastic. I love it, and you can pre-order it now on Apple TV, on Prime, Amazon Prime, on Vimeo and Vudu. I think those are the places you can order it. When I spoke to James, he was like saying, he just kind of made do with what happened with this COVID. He was wanting a theatrical release, very disappointed. But I think this is going to get a lot of attention. Someone just said, how long is it? I believe it's an hour and 40 minutes. I believe it's something like that. I can actually tell you in a second here, and I will take a look.
It's funny you got to watch it before I did, even though I have a credit.
Yes, Alejandro is in the credits. I was just simply blown away.
So I have luckily had some insight because I did help a bit with the production, especially earlier on. Well, throughout, whenever they needed me, getting to who's the best to talk to about this topic or that topic, and then getting them connected to it. The same reason a lot of shows contact me, but I don't work with all of them. I'll definitely always work with James Fox. He's awesome. So, and like you, his documentaries are my favorite in this field also. So,
well, I'll tell you what,
I'm
sure you'll have an emotional feeling about the end. When you get to the very end, it's kind of like, you really like, it's very moving. That the ending of the film is just. And I got to say,
I don't blame James at all for me not getting an earlier copy. I know, like he said, it was kind of taking it out of his hands in the end, which happens. The bigger your production is and the larger it's going to be distributed, the less control any one individual is going to have, even if you're the filmmaker. So that's just always going to be the case. So it's kind of bittersweet in that you want that because you want the more distribution as possible, but you have to give away some control when you do that, when it comes to marketing and everything. But thank goodness they are getting a hold of people like you and others, podcasters, and letting them see it early to get the word out. And I think what everybody's hoping, and I'm sure James hoped, is that it gets to a wider audience. That's why he wanted it to be in theaters, because that's his primary concern. He doesn't care as much about the money he makes. He cares more about the more people that see it because they need to see it. So
he's hoping, when I asked him the other day, he just said he's just hoping it'll move the needle. And he says, if this doesn't, then I don't know what will. You know, and I'd like to know how many countries. I meant to ask him how many countries he went to, because he's all over the place. So great, some great drone shots too, and some special effects that for some of the reenactments, some really good special effects. It's a fantastic movie, and I think you can get it for something like. There's different ways you can buy it. Now I know if you buy it, then you get, I think, another extra 2 hours of like behind the scenes and footage that you won't see. If you rent it, you just get the movie like you and I have available to watch.
Awesome. So that's really cool. So Phenomena coming out, and I'll have James on in a couple of weeks. And you had him on, right? I
had him on only for 10 minutes. He's such a busy guy, and it's so funny. It's like, are you going to be on or not? And then 2 minutes before the show starts, all of a sudden he pops in. It's like, oh no, I didn't even announce it or anything. So that's just James.
To do it though.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't put 2 and 2 together, because I thought he was your guest for the whole show, but that's not possible because you had another guest. So
no, he was just on for a couple minutes, along with Lee Spiegel, who's always fun to have on.
Yeah, Lee's always.
So Lee had some involvement. I don't know, people don't realize it, but he had a lot of involvement. He was out in California for maybe a few months. I think
there were 3 top guys, not including editors, but 3 top producers, and Lee was one of them. So Lee was essentially, I think, maybe even titled with this. He was like head writer. So Lee was there the whole time. He didn't go on all of the trips, but a lot of them. Although he kind of has a bad back, so he struggles with traveling. There's some really funny stories related to some of their adventures too that are hilarious. And
Yeah.
maybe one day we could get Lee to share all of those. In fact, I'm going to get him on and we'll talk about some of these funny stories. By the way, I do want to mention before we move on, and people will like this, I think, and I wanted to kind of ask your opinion on this off camera, but I'll do it here on camera, Martin. I'm always an open book anyway, I guess. Actually, you have a lot more secrets. If the people knew the things I knew about you, the secrets you've told me that you don't want them to know.
I know,
boy,
amazing.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, everybody. But I don't know if the
No one's
bot
listening. Yeah.
is not totally on board, but the live shows I'm not going to charge for anymore. I'm going to do you where they can watch the live show and then I'll archive it.
Oh,
And
okay, cool.
for the archives. On YouTube, have you done this?
No.
The YouTube subscription thing. You were commenting on that the other day.
Yeah. No, I've never done that. No.
Right here on YouTube, if you click the join button, click that right now.
You talking to me?
Click the join button.
All
You'll
right.
see you can join at 2 levels. The Rojas Reports live. Don't join at the live level because now I'm going to make it so you can join live. You don't have to be part of that. But join at the other level. I'll give you a minute. Join at that lower level. And now you'll be able to then get to the archives of all of my previous interviews, including, my upcoming ones. You'll have access to all of them. So then you'll be able to watch all of them. And you won't want to miss it because I have people like Luis Elizondo, Brian Bender, writer for Politico. Who else do I have? I've got on there me and I think John Greenwald, and then with Chris Mellon, one of the only people interview with Chris. Martin had a full hour ago, so I'm going to work on that too. But yeah, do that right. Did that. You'll be able to see everything.
Yeah, having a little bit of an internet issue. I'm not sure if you're seeing it on your side, are you?
No,
Huh. Okay.
Everything's fine here. So yeah, upcoming interviews. That's what we do from now on. If you are on Patreon and you're at the high level Patreon subscriber, don't worry because I'm still going to upload all the videos, access to all of and more. In fact, if you're at the high level Patreon level, that's where you can go and you could get giveaways and other stuff. Everything. That's the best. The interplanetary. That's the best one. Gas mask leg.
The interplanetary level?
On Patreon, the interplanetary is the highest level where you get everything.
Nice. Some people say gold and silver, and you're doing interplanetary. I love it.
Yep, interplanetary. Intergalactic planetary. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Intergalactic planetary. Yep, somebody's talking about the Dune movie. That looks really good. Nick West and Robert Powell going head to head soon on Nimitz should be fun. I'm not excited about that. I love Robert, but I don't know. I would opinion on this, and I do not want to be rude, but why do we care what Mick West says? I don't understand this at all.
Mick West is going on with who?
Powell. I'm not sure that's going to happen because I was part of trying to arrange that before. Wouldn't do it. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to happen. He's already told Robert Powell no several times, been involved with that. And
the reason why is his answer to all that is ridiculous. Now, I've seen some really good work.
Who cares? It's not like he's a FLIR expert. It's not like he has any expertise to matter. And that's my point. If we're
okay.
I do understand why anybody cares.
I'll make a point, I think, and that is there's a lot of people that follow Mick West, so and just believe everything that he says is true.
There's even more people that follow Joe Rogan. I mean, every skeptic has a large following, and you're not going to convince their following of anything. Um, so I just don't purpose. I think that people, it's one of these social media things that happens. People get all worked up about these conversations that happen, but these conversations are completely meaningless. Think of this: review all of the big conversations that have happened on social media in, let's say, the last 6 months or a year. Some of these stories, which I will not name, not to embarrass anybody, that got so huge. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. None of
Uh,
it happened. None
yeah.
of those conversations meant anything at
And
all,
and
except
where are
for
those people
maybe
now?
to undermine the
Yeah.
credibility of what they're trying to get out there. So, I mean, we need to focus our energy in the right place. And this is why this is so, sorry for getting soapbox. But one of the themes I got from the comments and talking to these scientists, these researchers, these media people, is what we don't need to be fighting over stupid minutia that has nothing to do with anything. The point isn't that the videos are very limited in, there's very limited what you can determine from those videos. The point is the Navy says they've investigated this case in those videos and they are convinced these are objects that are not human. That's what's important. That this is what the Navy believes. This is what the Navy determines. Questions are, why have you determined this, Navy? That's what we don't know. That's what we hope to get. That's what's important. Arguing about all this little minutia is a waste of time. It doesn't get us really anywhere. I mean, certainly you want to get to the truth in some of these issues, but um, what we need to be focused on right now, and this is what we've gotten in my conversations and what we will continue to get, is that the Navy, the DoD has been saying they're not going to share anything when it comes to UAP investigations. They've told this to John Greenwald now. They told this to Roger Glassell. They're saying all of this is classified. But the people who are asking them to share information, politicians. What we need to do is we need to get to these politicians and make them understand we care about this issue. They need to understand that there is a large amount of people out there who care and want these answers. Because if that doesn't happen and they are told, just like Jimmy Carter was told, there's just really not enough there. What we are finding are high-tech drones, the Chinese and Russians. We can't really tell the public about that. Classified. Some people are saying our classified stuff. So everything we do here is going to have to remain classified, because these conspiracy guys and these UFO conspiracy guys are just, barking up the wrong tree, and there's really nothing along those lines. If they do that, then the politicians could say, okay, great. As long as you guys are looking at this and you have it under control, we're fine. Boom. And all of a sudden, we get nothing. That's what we need to be focused on. We need to be focused like a laser on making sure these people understand this, because any social movement, any sort of, Brian Brender brought up, a whole host of different issues where the Congress was able to get information out of the military because there was a strong public interest. Right now, there is no strong public interest. There are weird people saying, Roswell, tell us where the are. And what are the politicians supposed to do with that? I think we need to be more savvy. Right now is a really important time. And unfortunately, I am cynical when it comes to the UFO community. Right now, they're just going to let it all slip through their fingers. I think once again, fighting about this minutia and things that they have no control over or will make no difference in the end. So, I mean, we really to focus here, people. I don't know what else
So
to
what would
say.
you tell someone listening to this show? How can they help?
How can you help? Get a hold of your politicians, send them letters, write them emails, get on their social media. And I'm not saying that it has to be a lot. They just they need to know, because they don't know who really and how interested are they? What is the backlash going to be? We don't share action. And right now, I think the backlash would be very, very minimal. I think that a lot of people are interested in this topic, but not everybody's convinced of the conspiracies. Um, so that I think the impact would be very, and if that's the case, then no detriment to them to not pay attention. So I think we got to do that, but we also need to let our scientific institutions know. And that came, mostly from my conversations. We had a academia panel, Diana Pasolka, Tim and Kevin Knuth, all PhDs. Diana has her tenure. They've been through the system. Diana's message with UFOs, have your tenure. you know, but the point of that is that um, that you're risking your ability to move up through the ranks in academia if you get involved with this stuff. Kevin Knuth is getting involved, but he's already established his expertise, known as an expert in certain issues. So he's established himself. Diana's saying the same thing. I've got my ear. Now I can stick my neck out a bit. But in order to change what's going on or to fund these sort of programs, who funds programs that are not based on profit? When it comes to science, every program that gets funded is because it's going to eventually turn a dollar. It's going to eventually make money. There are instances in which science is backed that is not necessarily going to eventually make money, like SETI. Who funds that? Government or investors? And that's the sort of thing we need. We need to let it know this is the sort of thing. We need to let them know that when they have unidentifieds, when they discovered unidentifieds in their UAP task force, we want to know about this. We want them to get that information to scientists who can research it in a transparent way. That is really our message and what we need to let them know. We want those unidentifieds researched transparently by a scientific institution. We need that. Otherwise, what they've said is that information is fine.
Now, what about, say, things that they already have in hand somewhere? For instance, I'm sure there's the Nimitz video, for one, just throwing out an example.
Yeah.
There was the other actual film of that Tic Tac that some people actually got to see before it went into whoever's hands. And whoever's hands has other things, I'm sure, wherever this stuff goes.
Well, anything that is UAP related will be classified. And is rightly so, because until you investigate it, you don't know what it is. You could be, unclassify it, let it out to the public. You could be letting the public see something that is supposed to be classified. You could be letting them see a Russian or Chinese technology that we may know they have, but we don't want them to know, until those things have to be looked at before they're released. In the case of Nimitz now, the great with Nimitz is that I think everybody heard that this is a genuine unknown. If that's the case, cases like Nimitz need to go somewhere where they're investigated transparently, where they're investigated and the public is let in on what's going on with that investigation, instead of doing nothing with it or keeping all of that classified. I mean, we're in the middle of the fight here. We haven't won anything except for now this more acceptable. But now's our chance to go out there and say, look, all we're saying is investigate these unidentified. Don't let them go into the trash bin. Look at those, because we need to figure it out. Just because you don't know what Nimitz is, I mean, we need to stop here. We need scientific investigation. And that's another route to creating funding for scientists, which there are a lot of behind the scenes who are interested in investigating these sort of things. Kevin Knuth is an example. But like Diana Pasolka is saying, if you're a scientist interested in doing this, don't let anybody know. Don't put your neck out there, because you could be hurting yourself. Wait till 10 years. So that's not a system we want. That's not what we want is what SETI did. SETI made this topic of aliens acceptable because it used to be fringe. It used to be laughed at. How did they do it? By bringing scientists to the forefront, by having scientists stick their neck out there and say, hey, we want to look for aliens. And they able to get funding and move forward. And that's the sort of thing we've got to do. That's why I'm enthusiastic about the Scientific Coalition for UAP Research, because they're a group of scientists that will hopefully do that. And that's where I think Robert Powell needs to focus on. We don't need to focus on Mick West. Mick West is not in the scientific community. He's not a person we need to convince to get on board. We'll be talking to the scientific community and any of those of skeptics. And we need to have our response by scientists who can speak the language or have the expertise and authority to make certain claims about search and investigation. So it says, what about congressional hearings? What are congressional hearings going to do? We've had topics of Congress somewhat here and there, but what's the result? The result is really not much. If you want a congressional hearing for an alleged cover-up, then you're going to have some pretty extraordinary evidence, not just extraordinary evidence, but extraordinary evidence that is very compelling and moving and gets a large public response. It's all hinged on a large public response. All of these congressional hearings we've seen in the past are usually due to a large, public response. The public says, we want to know. We want to know what happened in the Kennedy assassination, which created a panel which didn't resolve the issue. But congressional hearings often don't resolve the issue. So it's complicated.
Yeah. Now, was there any government?
Mick West is not going to have his mind changed no matter what. And I think that's been proven because, for instance, their expert that I've relied on, his name is David Fauch, and he's been debating Mick West, and he gave up because he's like, you just don't want the answers. You don't want expertise. You just want to stick to your skepticism. Yeah, Mark says Powell is solid. Mick West is who cares? I totally agree with that. And I don't mean to put down Mick. I don't even put down what he's doing, but he knows, and I've told him this directly, that I think it's completely disingenuous for him to expect the world to rely on expertise, which is the professional right way to do it, that you rely on experts to review material. You can't ask the world to do that and then at the same time get out there and try to profess yourself as some kind of an expert on this issue when you're not. And his expertise is video. When it comes to coding, video game, that sort of thing, he's an expert, but he's not a FLIR expert. And when he's trying to say, no, you FLIR expert, you're wrong, when to a guy who works on FLIRs all the time who can demonstrate he's right, what good is that? Yeah. I just don't see that. Somebody brought up Michio Kaku. That's a great example. Those are the type of people we need to face. Bill Nye. When Bill Nye says something stupid, that's when we need to get in there and say, hey, Bill Nye, we disagree, and here's why. Session, you did this. Here's we disagree, and here's why. That's the sort of thing we need to be doing. So I don't know. Mark says preach on. Well, we're almost at so. But finally, Japan. So
yes,
there's another story out there, which is pretty interesting, that Japan was inspired by the U.S. and their interest in UAPs, and that they have said that they are going to put together policy for their SDF, which is, I think, their self-defense force.
Yeah.
Because technically, we protect Japan, and they can have like a self-defense military. Although
self-defense forces, they call them.
Yeah, although they claim they've never had any UAP experiences, which is pretty shocking. I don't know that I've heard of any military around the world that has come forward that has said we've not had any UFO experiences. At least most, if not, have said we have had instances. They may say we don't think they're aliens, but we've had encounters with unidentifieds. Japan is saying, we'll keep an eye out, but fortunately we haven't had anything like that happen here.
Geez, I wonder about that.
I do too.
Yeah, looks like we ought to look into that a little bit.
Yeah. So tomorrow, Adam and I will be talking about that.
Oh, good.
So I guess that's about everything. Anything more you want to know?
No, I'm good here. Thank you. I think we covered pretty much everything that I can think of.
We have covered quite a bit. So join Adam and I tomorrow. Like I said, anybody will be able to join us now right here on YouTube to do our live discussion. That's going to be at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. So what is that? Like 1:30 your time, I think,
yeah.
Martin?
Yep.
Out there in the East Coast. And then otherwise, yeah, just keep an eye out because I'm back online, recovered from the conference. We finally got all that mostly all finished, sending out stuff. Other than that, keep an eye out because there were some winners of T-shirts. And I do have some T-shirts around. So I'm going to be hitting up my Patreon people occasionally and saying, hey, you want a T-shirt? What's your size? And I'll send that out. So check that out. But thank you, UFO Storian, Majestic Q Clearance, for being here. Gas Mask, Mark, First. Sometimes it's hard to tell what these names mean.
Adastra.
And Adastra. Robert Farmer, thank you. He's a subscriber, so he is the most awesomest out of this group. You're all awesome.
Yeah. Debin Steele, however you say that, I see him a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of people I see on my show here.
Steel.
Oh yeah, and then Bim Jim. He's always he's watching every video on YouTube. He's got some really good comments.
Yeah, he does. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
So Brian, thank you all so much for here. We'll see you next week when it comes to the Open Mind UFO Radio, and then of course join Rojas Reports tomorrow, and join Martin. His shows are Tuesday afternoons at Podcast UFO.
That's right. It's Tuesday afternoons on the West Coast, 6 p.m. East Coast, every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, he is scheduled and on time. And to be honest, I have a hard time being scheduled. That's why I also wanted to make the live shows free, because I often give people very little notice. This show is always Friday afternoon. The other show with Doug is always Thursday afternoon, either 12 or 1. This one's also early afternoon-ish. And it varies a little bit. But the Rojas reports are more all over the place because they're interviews, and I want people when they can do them. So that's why those are all over the place. And I have to give people often very little notice. But I can give you a lot of notice on Kevin, which will be on the 7th. And then it should be the 14th that I have James Fox. And I'll let you know about further stuff. But thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
So here we go with the ending. Ready?
Yep.
Adios, muchachos.